Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cicchetti.
Be sure to check out the Green Building Matters community, where you can have unlimited exam prep for any of the professional credential exams you're tackling next, as well as putting your continuing education on autopilot, saving time with GBS reporting your hours on your behalf. Check it out, gbes.com/join. Now, enjoy this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cicchetti, and today we're going to talk a lot about health and wellness. We've got a special guest on. I've got Amy D'Angelo. She's the Chief Executive Officer at Sustainable Green Spaces, and she's based in Venice, Florida. So, Amy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Charlie. Thank you so much for having me on. How are you doing today?
Yeah, fantastic. You know, all things considered as we come out of the pandemic, and I hope everyone listening is doing well. I think there's just confidence building. You know, I know we're going to get into it and talk about healthy buildings, just wellness, personal wellness, and some of the things you're doing with your company. And I can't wait, because when I think of you, Amy, that's what I think of, is just holistic living and just, you know, early adopter of just wellness best practices. I've seen you and Dean and how you've raised your family. And so I just can't wait to get some nuggets in this interview today. So I'm very excited. I like to just ask my podcast guests, though, you know, Amy, take us back. Where'd you grow up and where'd you go to school?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a Florida girl, which, you know, I recently moved my family back to Florida from Atlanta, but I grew up in Florida, right in Central Florida, in a small town called Ocala. Anytime you drive through the state, you drive right through it. I think you either know it because you've driven through it or you know it as horse country. But that's where I grew up. I went to college at the University of Florida. It was just 45 minutes up the road, but a really great education. And that's what really started me down the path of trying to figure out, you know, what I wanted to do with life and what I wanted my impact in the world to be.
Oh, that's great. And I know a little bit that I think your daughter's going to University of Florida coming up, so I'm sure you're a proud Gator fan there. That's good. I'm in the ACC, Georgia Tech, so it really doesn't matter to me, but I know you're really proud there, and that's a lot of fun getting the family also going to your alma mater. So, well, tell us, you know, we're going to talk sustainability, we're going to talk healthy buildings, but where do you think you first got introduced to, like, going green, or in your case, maybe even overall wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, for me, it really happened after I had kids. I think, you know, I didn't grow up in a home that was particularly sustainable. My mom, you know, always put healthy food on the table to her standards, and it was great. But when I had kids, you know, you start looking at the world differently. Our second child had a food sensitivity that really made us start paying attention to ingredients in food. And that's where it started for me, because you can't just stop there, right? When you start seeing some of the ingredients in food and you're trying to keep your kids healthy from that standpoint, you naturally kind of turn and say, well, what else am I bringing into the home that could be making them sick? And so that was, my son is 15 now. So about 15 years ago, where we really took stock of the food we were bringing into our home, the cleaning products we were using in our home. And we just really had to say, we've got to make a change here, because our children aren't as healthy as maybe they can be.
That definitely feels like an aha moment. It's like, okay, I got to do something here. And so tell us about the parts of your career, right? You know, maybe kind of where'd you start out after college, and then maybe an entrepreneurial stretch there, and then even some nonprofit work. And just, so tell us a little bit about some positions you took, and then how'd you get to now where you are, which is obviously going all in on this wellness movement. So just, you know, tell us about some of the early career first.
Well, I think I'm like probably a lot of your listeners where I have a lot of different things that I've done in my career, right? I didn't graduate from college and say, okay, there's this one thing. So when I graduated from college, we moved to Atlanta actually, and I went to work for a fundraising consulting firm. So I helped nonprofits raise money for buildings and endowments, strategic planning, feasibility studies, that sort of thing, kind of in this capital fundraising world. So I did that for a long time until my son started, to get sick with food. And that really led us on a path of looking for better food options out there, quick and easy things to make. And we could not find that on the market. So from there, my husband and I actually launched a healthy food company, and we made foods that our child could eat, but that were just really healthy and wholesome to put out there. So we lived in the food world for about 10 years. And at that point, we were still in Atlanta. We were in Atlanta for about 17 years total. And it was really time for me to get back to my roots. I needed to be warm and in sunshine more days than I wasn't. And I just wasn't finding that in Atlanta. So we made the move to Florida, and I went to work for a national nonprofit managing facilities and employees. And so really looking at how we can create wellness in the workspace is really where that started. Along the way, one of the things I realized is that my personal why is to inspire positive change in the people around me. And I really had an aha moment about a year and a half ago where I realized there's not one thing that I do that does that, right? It's this culmination of everything I've done and every different place I've found myself in. I can still find a way to make that positive change and to aspire that positive change. And so for the last year and a half, I've been really focusing on this wellness movement and how we take this wellness initiative that's happening in commercial real estate and really pull it back and apply those principles and best practices to our homes.
Oh, it's fantastic. You did a good job of showing us the different pieces, and obviously the organic food business and your family for 10 years. And I got to witness some of that. It was amazing. So let me ask, how'd you, transition from all things food wellness to air quality? We've had you as a guest on at GBS, and you do a fantastic job talking about things at home, wellness at home. We have a whole series around it. So have you had to go out and learn a lot about it? Or is it stuff you've been practicing? How do you go from just kind of being the expert, I would say you were, on the food side to now all these other pieces of wellness?
Right. And so that's kind of a combination of both. When COVID-19 hit and we all found out we just had a lot more time on our hands, right? Because we were home, all of those activities stopped. I'm not a person that sits at home with nothing to do well. I'm just not. And so my husband he was familiar, obviously, with the Well AP, and he had been telling me, Amy, this is something that I think you would really enjoy. Why don't you just go through the materials and take the test? And I had been saying, no, I'm busy. I'm managing this facility right now. I don't have time. Well, I didn't have that excuse anymore when COVID-19 hit. And so I started going through GBES's study program and the exam prep. And very quickly, I realized two things. Well, my husband was right. He'll like to hear that, right? That this is something that really interests me, but it interests me because these are things that we had been doing in our home all along, not necessarily connecting it back to, oh, that's going to be good for our indoor air, or that's going to be good for this, but just these holistic practices that we've been doing, removing air fresheners, buying less toxic cleaning products, right? But now I had a standard to go with that. And that really developed within me. And I know you and I talked very early in this process, that really developed in me this passion permission to say, you know what, other people need to do this just for themselves at home. This shouldn't just be contained to these buildings where you spend maybe 25% of your time. We really need to see how we can share what we do in our homes with people. And so it's been a combination of understanding now all of the best practices I'm doing and putting them in the box and saying, okay, this is indoor air quality. This is really comfort in mind, and kind of figuring that out.
Yeah, it's very validating too as you study for those credentials, those programs. And I'm proud of you for learning the commercial real estate, the commercial building, big building side of this wellness, healthy building movement that I've been doing for 6+ years, and saying, hey, what if this does still apply to our personal lives and our homes? Because you and I both agree on this. The future is going to be some at home, some at work. Where are you working? It's just an interesting hybrid right now. So tell those listening, Amy, about the 2 credentials, Fitwell Ambassador, which you have, and your Well AP, which you did breeze through. So that was pretty amazing. Obviously, 2 different tests, right? Well AP closed book at this time, 100 questions, multiple choice, a lot of medical statistics. Fitwell Ambassador, a great program, a great credential, online open book course, and then 50-question quiz, right? So can you tell us about those 2? If someone listening is like, you know what, I've got to get a credential in this wellness movement.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say of the 2, they're both really valid. I think if you're going into this wellness, this healthy building movement, looking at both of them, because they approach things slightly differently, right? So it gives you a really good approach. For the Well AP, I absolutely recommend spending time studying for that. I did the GBES Well AP study exam prep. So I did the live training plus the practice tests and the flashcards. And I honestly spent about 6 weeks studying every single day for this. It had been a long time since I had taken a test, right? When I sat for that credential. So that was definitely a larger commitment to studying and knowing the material. And then I took the test remotely, which is an interesting experience all on its own. For the Fitwell Ambassador, it's a little bit, I don't want to say it's a little bit easier, but it is a little bit easier of an exam because it is open book. You watch a video and then you go through the 50 questions, and it's definitely a little bit easier, but that doesn't make it any less valid, right? It is a great standard. I'm constantly pulling information from it when I'm going through and trying to create these best practices to use at home. And for anyone out there listening who's interested, either of these credentials are going to set you in a good way.
Thank you for just showing everybody, because I know there's some listening right now that are maybe have a lead professional credential and it's like, okay, I need to do something. You gave great advice there. So let's talk mentors, and then we'll go to proudest accomplishments. So mentors, have you had anyone that you kind of looked up to along the way you'd call a mentor, or maybe someone you just kind of followed them, they inspired you, as you kind of built your career here?
Yes, absolutely. So I've been really fortunate in my life to work for some really amazing people. And it started really back in, I guess when I was in college, I worked for the city of Ocala, and I worked in the city manager's office. And we had an assistant city manager. Her name is Janet Tutt. And I still am connected with her today. And she just really taught me how to be a professional in this world, right? What does that look like? How you treat people, how you talk to people, how you respond to disgruntled citizens. She just was a very positive source that really helped me just understand that connection, right? Which has served me well my entire career. And then along the way, I've just had really great colleagues and bosses that have all imparted their wisdom with me as we've gone. I've been really fortunate in that regard.
Thanks for doing that. It's important to give those a shout out that have helped you, influenced you, open a door. So it's amazing. Mm-hmm. So let's look back for a minute. What are some of your proudest accomplishments?
I think first and foremost, my kids, right? I think my daughter is about to embark on her college career. And I have a son who is in high school, and they are both just really kind, compassionate, productive citizens. And that definitely is my proudest accomplishment. From there, I think I'm really proud of just my ability to consistently move forward, right? To not get stuck in any one space, to constantly look for how I can not only improve myself, but how can I make a greater impact in the world around me? And that's just something that I do every day, right? It's a conscious thought of how do we make a bigger impact today?
It's great. You got great kids, great family. I'm happy I get to know all of you, and just following your passion. You and Dean, 10 years in the organic food business, and you've got a heart for helping others. Thus, all the nonprofit work over the years, and now another entrepreneurial journey here. And I just can't wait to kind of help you just get the word out about what you've got going on. And so that's a good segue too. Amy, hey, tell us what's keeping you busy today.
Yeah, so I have launched the Home Wellness Project, which is really just my opportunity to help people create wellness in their homes and expand it beyond diet and exercise, right? I think so often when we think about wellness at home, we think about, I should eat better and I need to exercise more. Well, yes, those things are important, but there are so many other things that go into that. How can we improve your indoor air quality? How can we make sure the water that you're drinking is the safest source? How can we bring nature in? How can we really connect with nature so that it helps you just naturally reduce stress? And of course, also, how can we look at the way you're lighting your home and make sure that your circadian rhythm is really being recharged every day because we're on the correct cycle of lighting our homes. And so how do we develop, good sleep policies at home? So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just developing best practices on all of these areas, taking them some from the wellness real estate initiatives, and then some just from what I know works in our homes with our families, because I think ultimately all we want is for our families to be well and healthy, right? And this is just one more way that we can do that.
Absolutely. And I know you're doing this work with organizations. You and I have had some talks, presentations with Fortune 100 companies so they can cast it out to their employees, down to small businesses or just individuals. I know you're willing to just share, hey, here's what I do. Here's what I've tried and tested, and this might work for you. Because a lot of times, right, it's just education first. It's
absolutely.
I didn't know all that about candles and diffusers and all these synthetics and just the simple things that now we really want to pay a little closer attention to.
One of the things that I've done most recently is just an indoor air quality course for dorms for families of other kids going to the University of Florida that I've connected with, through a Facebook group. So it's really just, how can we get the information out there to more people so we can really impact the health and well-being of students and our families.
Love it. So if you had a crystal ball, what's next? What's next in this wellness movement?
Yeah, I think it's really this connection of wellness at home. I think one thing that COVID-19 has done is it's made us all really kind of take stock. And if we know we're walking into a well-certified building every day for work, and now we're not doing that because we're working more at home, I think there's a natural inclination to say, well, how do I extend some of these best practices and some of the things that my office is doing in my home? So I really see, the Healthy Building Initiative absolutely continuing on the commercial side and really bleeding a little bit more into the residential and individual homes.
I echo that. I think you're absolutely right. That's a good point. We've had some webinars on this. For those listening, we'll put links to some webinars where we've had Amy come on as a guest on GBES with our 2-3 times a month webinar. So you can check out some more of her best practices and where to start. I think anything else with wellness before we kind of focus a little more here on you, Amy, anything that you're just trending, you're researching, or any other kind of projects you want to highlight right now?
Yeah, so we are launching our indoor air quality online course here pretty soon, and that's super exciting. It's just focusing on indoor air quality in your home, but a way to really take that first step in improving the wellness in your home.
Good. That's exciting. There's a need for that. So everybody check that out as well. We'll put a link in the podcast show notes. So here on the podcast, as I interview green building and healthy building wellness professionals like you, Amy, I want to get to know you more. So some rapid fire questions. What would you say is your specialty or gift?
I think inspiring positive change in the world around me, just having the ability to understand some of these big topics and then share them in a way that makes sense for somebody else to do in their homes.
So unpack that a little bit for us. Do you thoroughly research it and you put it in a kind of layman's terms? Like, walk us through what's in your mind when you're going through that.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with research, right? It starts looking at the building standards. It might start, looking at some other articles and then figuring out, okay, so, the average person isn't going to take the time to read this 14-page document. How can I break that down and create just some really simple strategies that still will have a big impact on their indoor air, for example?
Good. Thanks for showing us that. And do you have any good routines, rituals, or habits?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a morning routine that really sets me up for the day. We get outside, so we have that connection to nature, that light, the sunlight immediately. We walk our dogs, so we have just that little bit of family time. And then that really will set the tone of my day. If that walk goes well, then we have a really fantastic rest of the day. But that is crucial for us to be kind of the first thing we do in the mornings.
That is a good habit. I know you've got several others. Would you mind just giving us a little peek into the D'Angelo household? What are one or two other things that just holistic living that you just really know help keep your family having a great week?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things I do kind of weekly that changes, that makes our life a whole lot easier, is just meal planning. So taking that time to really sit down and plan out the meals we're going to eat, with Dean and I both working from home and then the kids in and out. That's really helpful. So everyone knows what's for dinner and what's in the fridge for leftovers. The other thing that I do personally that really helps set me for the day is just my morning food routine, right? So drinking some lemon water and having a smoothie, that really sets me for making good choices throughout the rest of my day. And so those would be kind of the three big things, I would say.
Thank you for giving us those pro tips, those best practices. Amy, I'm a fan of the bucket list. What are one or two things maybe on your bucket list? Maybe some adventure, travel, write a book, who knows? What are one or two things on your bucket list?
Yeah, I think the number one thing would be a trip to the Galapagos, right? I am all about connecting to nature and seeing the amazing things that are out there in the world. I think number two for me would be hiking to Machu Picchu. So those are my two. They're big trip. Those are big things, but those are definitely on my bucket list.
Those are great bucket list items. I haven't done either of those yet. Those sound amazing. And I wanted to also just say the meal planning, our family too, if we can meal plan on a Sunday and get groceries that day, our week, it's just a better week. So
it is. It's amazing how much that simple thing can really positively impact your week.
I love it. Okay, so how about books? I'm not sure if you like to just pick up a hard copy and hold it in your hands and read it, or you maybe listen to books, but is there a book you'd recommend?
Yeah, I think the last really great book I've read was Atomic Habits, and just the way we can kind of do this habit stacking. I think it's fantastic. I think we all kind of have this idea of how we develop habits, but I don't know that we've ever put as much thought into it. So kind of getting back to the basics of that was really helpful for me, especially through the pandemic when I found myself at home all the time. That was really helpful.
It's a fantastic book. James Clear, I'm a big fan of it. Here at my home office where we're recording this, I have one of the printouts, how to change a habit, but just the opposite, how to break a habit, right? The cue, the reward. Mm-hmm. And so everyone check it out. We'll put a link in the podcast show notes. If you haven't, you make sure you get Atomic Habits. Okay, as we come to a close, two final questions here. First one, is there any advice you wish you'd have received earlier in your career?
I think I would have liked someone to tell me to celebrate the failures, right? That risk-taking is important. And if you're not failing, you're not trying.
Wow. I was listening to you there and I'm like, wow, I don't know if I've really honestly heard that. And I would wholeheartedly agree. That's actually really good. I mean, it's just making us stronger. We're learning. And that with your entrepreneurial streak, it's important that there's some encouragement along the way, but also just, hey, we're learning, trying to figure it out. We're taking some risks. So I applaud that. Great career advice. And as we come to a close, a word that's very important is encouragement. So let's say there's someone listening right now. Maybe they're early in their career, or maybe they've had a career and they're going to make a pivot. And they're like, wellness, healthy buildings, I'm going all in. Mm-hmm. Hey, what words of encouragement do you have for them right now?
I would say always move forward. And this is a great industry to be in right now, whether you're just coming into it or you've been in it for a long time. Things are really looking up for wellness. People are really paying attention to it. I had a company reach out to me after one of the webinars we did and wants to talk about creating a wellness initiative for their company, right? Companies that have never done this before are starting to understand the importance of this. So just always move forward because there is a lot of opportunity here.
It's amazing. Great encouragement. I love seeing how your career has gone all in on something you've been passionate about for so many years. Everyone, this has been Amy D'Angelo. Please connect with her on LinkedIn. Reach out. Let her know what you thought of the podcast. If you need anything, check out her course, and we'll put all those links again in the show notes. So, Amy, thanks for sharing your story today.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to our loyal listeners. We actually are celebrating over 1 year here on the Green Building Matters podcast. Me and the entire team were stoked and just so glad you continue to listen every Wednesday morning to a new interview with a green building professional here in this industry, or just some pro tips that we want to make sure that you are getting straight from us, straight to you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.